I love Tennessee. I love Tennessee. It is beautiful. How many of you are not from Tennessee originally? You came because it's so pretty, didn't you? So we left church yesterday. We went to lunch. We decided to drive because we just wanted to take a leisure drive and come and enjoy the beauty of the state. And so we wanted to push it as long as we could last night. So we drove. We went to lunch after church. You know, I started my day at 5 o'clock in the morning. We went to lunch. We hit the road, and we drove until what? 11 o'clock last night because we wanted to get as far as we could so that today we could get up leisurely and take our time because I like to get up. He brings me coffee every morning. Husbands, it's a great thing to do. Yeah, that's a man clapping. Come on, women. But that's how I do best with, just a slow start in the morning. And then we got ready. We planned, my schedule was to hit the road at 10 o'clock, and I was right on time. Then we had a couple stops to make. We were doing great, and we're looking at the beauty of the land. Had no idea that it started at 5 and that we were going to lose an hour. So our
GPS didn't know that we had a time change.
No. So that leisure drive, you know exactly what happened when I found out that we weren't going to stop again? My bladder got totally full, and there was no time for stopping. And so we're on the road, and I have the Trenta, it's the Venti, Trenta, the largest drink you can get from Starbucks of black iced tea. And I've got it half drank, and I'm just looking at it thinking, I really got to go. I'm going to get a little bit more. So anyway, we're going, and we're like 2 hours further, and I'm about to bust. And I just thought, I'm going to die if I don't go to the bathroom, and we do not have time to stop and go to the bathroom.
This is way too much information.
I know, but this is me. I'm just letting you know what kind of person I am.
Pastor, I'm sorry.
I will tell it all. So we haven't...
I gotta go too.
We're going to have a mass exodus in just a minute. So I'm getting warm. So we're driving, and I'm looking at that drink, and I'm sizing it up, thinking, will it work? Will this work? And Kendall gets a phone call, and I think this is the perfect time. He's on the phone. He won't make fun of me, because if he knew I was trying to go to the bathroom in the back of the car, he'd start swerving, right? Because he's mean like that. So I thought, I'm gonna go change in the back, babe. So this is not an RV. This is an SUV. So I crawl over, and we've got clothes hanging, so I close the clothes so he can't see me. I finished my drink.
I had no idea any of this was going on.
He didn't. I finished my drink, and I go to the bathroom, and I feel great for the rest of the... So meanwhile, this one over here, his stomach is just getting bigger and bigger because he has to go to the bathroom, but he just sucked it up, and we got here.
That's the way you're going to start this retreat.
You told me tell a joke while you're trying to find the papers, so...
No, I didn't. I didn't say tell our most vulnerable moments there.
We still got to see the most beautiful land at 100 miles per hour. We're going to have a nice leisure drive home.
But we're
going to stop to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes.
Do you pastors ever have these moments, since we're talking about having to go to the bathroom, where it's just a few minutes before you're about to take the platform, and all of a sudden it hits you? You got to go, and you're thinking, do I have time to run out? Or do I just hold it? No, I can't leave. I don't leave now. Everybody will know I'm leaving. They'll know what I'm doing. So you just hold on to it, and then it bugs you through the whole sermon. I'm glad there's a few other people that were nodding their heads.
Just get a large cup from Starbucks.
Don't do that. Pastor Terry, Sister Susan, thank you so much for allowing us to come. Since we'll never be invited back again, we might as well enjoy this moment right here. It is really good to be here. We had the privilege, as Pastor Terry said, last summer to be with a smaller group, and just so honored that you would invite us to come back and to be able to be with many friends, Randall and Darlene. We were able to go to the Holy Land together when I was just a teenager with Randall and Darlene, and Darlene's mom and my family. So the McCartys have been wonderful friends of the Bridges for years and years. But just so good to see each and every one of you here. Why don't you, Jeremy, will you help me? Man, you're on fire tonight. Didn't Jeremy, is he always on fire? dude was on it. I was just saying, just go ahead, just give an altar call, just take it, just run with it. We'll just, yeah. Okay, I'm going to give you my microphone, and Starla's, here's what I want you to do. Take my mic, and then
Just pick some random couples real quick.
just run out, grab a few random couples. Well, no,
No,
just
don't
go
really
up
grab
to them.
them,
Yeah, don't
but-
grab them. Yeah, don't grab.
Grab the
Just
husband
go
or the
to
wife.
them.
Hey, the husband or the wife, either one.
Either
Yeah.
one you pick, and she's gonna,
Somebody you want to pick with, just one at a time. Just grab one person.
that way, we're not picking on anybody.
We're just going to find out a little bit about you real quick. This one? Go.
So before we tell you about ourselves, we want to find out a little bit about you. So we're starting with Jake.
Yeah, I got to find a good question for him, though. Okay, who's more romantic in your marriage?
Me.
Is that true? Is that true? Okay. All right, pick somebody else, just randomly. Question roulette. Who said I love you first?
He did.
He did?
Yeah,
All right.
he did.
Oh. Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
Bring it home.
Oh no.
Tell us who you are real quick when you do it.
Oh, my name's Nick.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey. Good. How are you? You feeling better?
I'm good. Who's a better driver?
Me, but not by much, I guess. I enjoy it more than she does.
Who's better at it?
We're both good, right? I enjoy it better. That's all.
You
I'll
enjoy
say.
it. Okay, wait. Here's a follow-up question.
Okay.
Who's had more accidents? Who's had more
Probably
tickets?
her, I guess. But... Sorry, I'm not very good at this.
That's okay. 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 Who do we have here?
Shannon Sizemore.
Okay.
And Amy. Shannon and Amy Sizemore.
Who's a better dancer?
Oh, that's me. That's me.
I don't think she agrees.
It's okay.
He's okay?
I'm more groovy.
Prove it.
Are we still going?
Go. Ready? All right. Woo. All right.
Wow.
Who do we have?
David Crawford, Indiana.
All right. Who leaned in first for the first kiss?
That'd be me, yeah.
All right. Where?
I didn't
what?
get it, but I tried.
You said no?
She turned her cheek. Yeah,
Oh, all right. All right.
after $100, but that's,
Okay, wait.
What?
So how many times did you have to lean back in to finally land it?
Probably about one more time, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, man, I had a follow-up question. Oh. Where was that first, legit kiss?
In my driveway.
In your driveway? All right. In the car?
Yes,
All right. Just wondering.
just 30
All right.
minutes. Not a big deal.
All right.
On the lips.
All right. Who we have?
Lindsay.
Who wins all the arguments?
Oh, I do.
Okay. Who starts all the arguments?
I do.
Okay. All right, who we got? One more. She's honest. Yeah, she's honest. Do you agree? Does he? Okay. All right, this is the last one we'll do. Who we got?
My name's Tyler. My wife is Brooke.
Okay. Who has the crazier family?
That's really hard. A crazier family.
Yeah. There's always some.
Probably her.
Yeah. Does she agree? Yeah. Yeah?
She said yeah.
All right, she's looking for another question. Let's see, did you find another couple?
I got one. You got somebody? Yeah, right here. Oh, that's it. Okay.
Hello. Ronnie and Monica Sanders.
Okay. You ready for this?
Bring it on.
All right. What came as the biggest surprise to you after you got married?
Oh, Lord.
Be careful.
That's way too long ago. I don't know. I have no clue. Do you have a surprise?
No,
I really don't know. It's
So-
been too long.
So no shocks, huh? After
no
you were married
shocks.
for a little bit?
No shock. We've been together too
Wow,
long.
you guys should be up here because we had a lot of them.
We didn't have any
None.
that I know of. No.
Okay. All right, Jeremy, we're going to let them all off the hook. You have more? Well, not for tonight? Okay. Thank you for playing along. Hopefully, over the next couple of days, we'll get to know each other just a little bit better. Yeah, you want to take that one?
Appreciate it.
One of the things that we love doing, especially with pastors, is just being able to invest in pastors' lives, invest in marriages, because we realize that our marriages have a big, giant target on the back of each and every one of our families. Because if the enemy can take down you, then he can affect the entire church.
Yeah.
So we love ministering to ministers, and thank you for this opportunity. We did get rushed to get here, and I told Starla as soon as we landed, I said, I just need about 30 minutes to sit and just...
Go to the bathroom.
No. What is it with you in bathroom today? She's never done that before. Susan, I'm so sorry.
It's true though, right?
No, that's not what I was talking about. I was walking into the lobby and I just wanted to relax. Anyway, I wanted the spiritual moment that we got during worship just a moment ago. I was trying to get spiritual here. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just completely move from that. Since we were with you, we've had one more grandchild. So we actually have 10 grandchildren now. 4 children, all are married. And the 3 oldest have 3 children. And then our youngest daughter who's married has 1 little baby boy. So we have 10 grandbabies, and we love spending time with our grandchildren. Now, we recognize that marriage is difficult and challenging, and we're going to do this a little bit different tonight and tomorrow and Wednesday morning, because I recognize not everybody's married, but we're going to relate everything that we're sharing to you as an individual. So whether you're married, whether you're not, whether you're dating, or whether you're single, I believe that what God wants to do tonight is going to be very specific for every person here. Hasn't the last year and a half been crazy? I mean, it's just been incredibly challenging in so many different ways. And we've all had to adjust, and we've all had to change. We've all had to figure it out one day at a time. And that's a whole lot like what marriage is. You're having to figure it out one day at a time because things change all the time. We change, when we started out as kids, boys had one interest and girls had another interest. And then we got a little older and we, traded in our G.I. Joes for footballs, and then a little later got interested in girls. And the same way, girls turned in their Barbies for something else, and maybe we got more interested in cars. But because we're constantly changing, the marriage always changes because we continue to change. We change as grandparents. How many grandparents are here? Okay, you notice how we change?
Yep.
Our children discipline their children exactly the way we discipline our children, and we look at them like they're evil people, right? How dare you hit my grandchild? What, spank them? No, don't spank them for that. Let's reward them. Why we change, right? We change. It's our rite of passage. We can change if we want to. But the fact is, we change. Our culture is changing. Everything's changing. That's just the world that we live in today. And we have to constantly be changing. Now, myself, I'm a preacher's kid. As Pastor Terry said, my father was superintendent of the North Texas District and served with the general counsel office. But I grew up in a preacher's home. How many preacher's kids are here? Okay, but then you understand this. 2 brothers. You mentioned my older brother. I have an older brother just a couple of years older than me, and one just 14 months younger. We were very close in age. So a lot of times, because my mom was working a full-time job, either dad would come pick us up from school or his secretary would come pick us up from school and bring us back to the church, and we would hang out at the church in the afternoon until we either went home went home after work or went to football practice or whatever. But this is what we usually ended up doing, finding our way to the church kitchen, hoping that the WMs left some sandwiches somewhere, But usually what we found was stale communion wafers and sour grape juice. And so we would sneak into the church kitchen and we would eat all the stale communion wafers that we could handle, and then we'd throw back shots of sour grape juice like cowboys, drinking whiskey. That was what we did. And it's a miracle that God still loves us and has grace over us. But we played church at home. I don't know, maybe we were really just sheltered, but we did. There were three of us, and one would lead the singing, one would preach, and I'd usually try to take up the offering.
And nobody got saved.
But I'm your typical preacher's kid. Starla and Starla's a preacher's kid as well, raised in a preacher's home, but we are total opposites. How many are married to your opposite? Okay, most. How many are not married to your opposite? You guys are like, really? Okay, just a handful of you. There's a reason why we're married to our opposites. The problem is I just didn't pick up on it soon enough. We're really, really different. I like black coffee, the way God made it. And Starla likes she's the almond milk cappuccino with cinnamon and honey, the frou-frou thing. That's the way she likes it. We're just completely opposite, as different as men and women are. We're just different. I'm the microwave and she's the crock pot in every part of life. When it comes to getting dressed in the morning, microwave, crock pot.
But I have no stress.
When it comes to packing to come to an event like this, microwave, crock pot. When it comes to shopping for Christmas, microwave. I can get it done on Christmas Eve. That's fine. That's all I
Done
need.
in October. Just
So we're completely opposite in everything. And we have our natural differences between men and women. Women, no matter how beautiful you are, you can stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself and think that you're fat. Men, no matter how fat we are, we stand in front of that same mirror and we think we look like Superman, right? We're sucking in the gut. We're showing those guns. Yeah, that's just the way we are. We're just different like that. Women can stand in front of a closet, a full furnished closet, and say, nothing to wear. Guys, you look in a closet and it's got a pair of jeans and a couple of t-shirts, we're good for a whole week, we're good. We're just different like that. We recognized that we were different very early on. When you asked what was the shock after you got married, that was our shock, because love really is kind of blind. And I really honestly thought I was marrying somebody that was just like me. We had all the common interest, all the shared interest. And we woke up one morning and it's like, we are completely opposite. How did we end up together?
it really wasn't that sweet. It was, oh dear God, what have we done?
That's true.
It is true.
But I'm more of the positive person. She's more of the negative. She calls it realistic, right? I mean, my blood type is B positive,
Oh, negative.
That's just us. That's just the way we are. The problem is I didn't recognize that our differences were actually a perfect match for a complete team until it was way too late. Starla would operate in discernment, and most of you women I know have that special gift, operate in discernment. The problem is I didn't recognize it as discernment. You know what? I saw it as negative, and I really thought that my goal in life, and this is a sad reality, but I thought my goal in life was to convert her from that pessimistic person over to the optimist lifestyle. That was my goal. I'm gonna help her see the silver lining in every circumstance. The problem is when she would operate in discernment, I didn't see it as discernment. I saw it as negativity. And so I would attack it. I would point it out. I would, I tried to defeat that in her because I thought I was trying to make her into a more positive person, not recognizing that she was exactly what I needed. The sad truth is, and this is probably a reality for a lot of pastors, and especially younger pastors, listen to me carefully. Early on, I was way, way, way more interested in success in my ministry than I was success in my marriage. And the reason is because I just thought the marriage was going to work itself out. I thought, hey, we're married, we're in the ministry, we're doing what God's called us to do. We're going to find each other down this road somewhere. We're going to come together because we started out early in ministry, and I was focused on church and growing a church, and we started having children, and she was taking care of the children. So she was focused on children, I was focused on church. And I thought, we'll meet up down the road somewhere, when our lives kind of slow down a little bit. It just didn't happen like that. You've got to be more intentional about it. We were on two different paths, not two bad paths, just two different paths. In 1989, we started our very first church. Some of you guys weren't even born then. We planted our first church. It was right before the decade of harvest started. And we were kind of ahead of that curve of church planting fever. And March 1989, Easter Sunday, we started. And God started blessing that work. And again, I was consumed with growth. I was consumed with adding to that church. I was consumed with reaching people, all for a good cause. Well, there was probably a little too much pride involved in it, but I wanted to reach people. I also wanted to grow a church. And 15 years into that process, when you start down two different paths, sooner or later, you're going to find yourself further away than you really should be. And I'm trying to grow this church as fast as I can. Starla's raising our children, and we're passing each other at church, kind of coming and going. And 15 years into that church plant, our world kind of came crashing down. This has been 17 years ago, and it's still the most painful story I ever have to tell. It wrenches my gut every time I have to share it. But to be open and honest and transparent so that you can learn from the lessons of others, this is our story. I did not feel celebrated at home. I came home to crying babies. I felt celebrated at church. So that's where I stayed. That's where I got patted on the back. That's where I got told, good job. This is nothing against Starla, but some of you guys know when you got 2 or 3 babies at home with diapers and crawling and spit up, you come home, what do? You get a baby in your arms. Here, take a baby, change that diaper and feed this one while I put that one to sleep. And so it was easy to create reasons to stay at church. And that's what I did, and continued to emotionally separate from Starla and from our commitment, and found myself in one of the most horrible places I could ever find myself, and broke the vows that I made to my wife. I was unfaithful to her. I committed adultery and made the worst decision I've ever made in my entire life. When I realized that there was no way to really get out of this, I wish I could say I was convicted and came crawling back to Starla asking forgiveness, but that's not. I tried to hide that and cover that up, and when it was clear, okay, my wife's going to find out about this, something happened to me that day that's never happened to me since, and I hope never happens to anyone here, but a spirit of suicide came over me, and I thought the best thing I could do for Starla is to take my life. The best thing I could do is for her to not have to look at me in the eyes and have to deal with my shame. And that's the way I was framing it. I thought the best thing for my kids is to not have to look with shame upon their father. And so I got in my car and I took my gun and I started driving. And again, Mr. Positive here, I don't feel like I've ever had a negative day ever. But that day, the only solution that seemed to make any sense was to take my life. And I got in my car and I started driving. I didn't have any idea where I was going. And I ended up driving out to a little farm where my grandparents used to own. And it's actually the very place where I got saved, where I gave my life to Jesus, which is a whole nother story. But while on that place, my brother was playing us 8-track tape of a Dallas Holmes song, Coming to Jesus, when I gave my life to Jesus as a teenager, back 16 years old. So here I am 40 years, and I'm 40 years old, and I'm driving back to that same little place, and I get there, that little farm. I'm trying to find the courage, and at the same time trying to talk myself out of taking my own life, when I hear those same words sung all over again. Come unto Jesus. Give him your life today. And I remember telling the Lord, okay, back then I had a lot of promise. I gave you my life then. I've screwed it all up. What in the world do I have to give you today? What could you do with this? Because I've messed everything up. There's no way you want this. And I could just hear those words again. Come unto Jesus. Give him your life today. I said, okay. All right. This was my moment of coming back and the cloud lifting, the darkness lifting. I turned around and drove back home. Walked into our home and it was horrible. But that started a process of restoration. Oh, it wasn't easy. It was a long 5-year process. It was difficult. It was challenging. And my biggest difficulty in all of that was the shame, getting past the shame of somehow being able to even lift my head up again and move forward. We walked back into our church. I resigned as our pastor. I asked for their forgiveness in time if they could, and we started down this road of restoration. Starla's challenge was completely different, and that's her story to tell.
As Kendall said, I had the gift of discernment, and there was different times throughout our marriage, and he is, I think a lot of ministers are this way. They're that outgoing personality, that sanguine, that people are just drawn into them. I'm the total opposite. Kendall wants to make everybody happy, and he wants to make everybody feel good about themselves. He's an encourager. He's fantastic at that. And I don't trust nobody. Prove it. I'll believe it when I see it. I've just always been I'm a watcher. And that's it's my weakness and my strength. And I recognize that. It's both of our weaknesses and our strengths. But there would be times that I would tell my husband, well, let me just back up. 5 years before we found out about the moral failure, a woman came into our church. And almost immediately, I had a weird feeling about her. It was a family. It was her and her husband, her children. I had a strange feeling. And a few months after they had been there, I was in the car with the kids, and Kendall's phone rang. He had gone back into the house to get something, and they had just barely been there. His phone rang, and I answered it, and it was her. And I gave it to him, and I said, you need to be careful. You need to be careful. And he just kind of looked at me like, okay, whatever. And years went by, And it was kind of a slow falling, and the boundary would just move a little bit further and a little bit further. And I was seeing it happen before my eyes, and every time I would say something, it's like it just wedged us more and more apart. And 5 years down the road is when he fell into the failure with this woman. I didn't know till later that when she came, she had left another church because she had a problem there. Kendall knew that in counseling. So I just want to throw something out to pastors. Kendall, how many of you are actually counselors in the room? Like maybe 2 or 3. Be careful, pastors, when you're counseling with people. There are people who are trained to counsel. They're given the tools. Even after what we've been through, we still don't counsel couples. We will talk with them and we'll direct them to a counselor because there's so many things that we don't get because we didn't study about it. We don't know all there is to know about counseling. So pastors, be careful. And a really big warning sign, and this is to all the wives too. If anybody comes to you and says, don't tell your husband, don't tell your wife, the first thing you need to do is say, then don't tell me. All right? And if someone does need to come talk to you, and this is not just to prevent you from having a moral failure, but this is to cover your butt because this world is so crazy right now. People are out to destroy ministers and churches. Always have someone with you, no matter if it's a woman or a man. Always have someone else in the room to listen to what's being said. Be careful. Be careful. So when it finally came out that my husband, let me say something else too. I said it took 5 years. Did y'all follow that? It took 5 years for him to cross that line. And every time I would present something to him, say something to him, it would just boil inside of me. It was everything I could do to work up the courage to say, did this happen? Is something going on? And I would say it, and I would get almost like a bully beat down verbally for saying such terrible things or thinking such terrible things. So I was pretty much beaten down to thinking I was completely losing my mind and going crazy. And I was about to lose our church that we had just built 2,000 seat auditorium, 15 years into this church that we had planted. And I was about to throw it all away because I was insecure, I was jealous, I was ungodly, I was seeing things that weren't there, and I needed to get my act together, and I really thought I was losing my mind. So when I found out that my husband had been unfaithful to me, for a moment, I was relieved because I thought, oh, thank God I'm not crazy. Then when I found out he wanted to kill himself, I said, come home, I'll do it for you. And I'm not kidding, because I was really, really, really mad. And I had to go through all of those stages that you have to go through because we had just experienced death. Our marriage was over. It was dead. And I had to go through that grieving process, and you have to go through each step. And the problem I had, and like I said, I'm one of those, I'll believe it when I see it, because I'd had so many years of lies just looking me in the eyes and just without a problem lying to me. I didn't think I'd ever be able to believe him again. And so I just sat back and I watched. And as I sat back and I watched him, bitterness and hate and anger was just growing, had taken root inside of me and was just growing and completely taking over. And for the first time, I was the one that was in control in our marriage. And I had the power of what was going to happen next. And I kind of enjoyed it. I liked it. Because the husband that I had before the failure was angry, mean, never physically abusive, but he just wasn't a nice person to me. He was amazing to the church, but he wasn't nice to me. And I really didn't like him that much. And I would just sit in church sometimes and think, whatever. He's preaching this message and I think, live it at home, dude. I know none of you wives have ever thought that. But now I'm seeing this man humble himself and go through the restoration process that the Assemblies of God had. And God moved us from Texas to Louisiana because they had a fantastic restoration program. Most states don't have a good one. Texas was terrible. But Louisiana really had a heart for restoring ministers, and they took it upon themselves to just really pour into our lives. And I watched him do everything they told him to do, and it was a lot, and it was hard, and it was embarrassing, it was humiliating, but he did it. And the anger was gone. He stopped blaming me. He stopped blaming other people. The anger just left. And he was a kind, gentle, loving person. And he would tell me he loved me, and I couldn't say it back because I had no feeling for him whatsoever. I was dead. I was really dead. And for 5 years, he would tell me he loved me. And for 5 years, I couldn't say I love you back. And I couldn't put my wedding ring back on because it was a lie. I didn't want to put it back on. I didn't want to be unfaithful. I just wasn't ready. But 5 years is too long to mourn and too long to stay in that state I was in. And what was happening is he was becoming this amazing man of God, and I was becoming angry, bitter, mean. That person that I hated before in him. And the pivotal night in my life is I was still praying and asking God to change our family and heal my life, but it was just hitting the ceiling because I was so hateful and so mean and so calloused, and it was going nowhere. But I was reading the story about the woman who was caught in the act of adultery. And I was reading it, and it came to the part where they brought the woman before the teachers and before Jesus. The Pharisees brought her before Jesus and wanted to stone her because she'd been caught in the act of adultery. And my mind immediately thought, why didn't they do that to Kendall? Why didn't they pull him in front of the crowd and stone him? That's how ugly I had become. And God really just opened up my eyes to see the person I'd become, and I really hated who I was. I hated it. And when I continued to read the story about how Jesus said, let him without sin cast the first stone, and all these people are holding these rocks, and one by one, they began to drop the stones and walk away because they knew they couldn't, because they had sin all in their life. And that night, I pleaded with God to help me stop throwing the stones at my husband that I'd been throwing for years and years and years. And I continued to just read through my Bible, and I was taken to another scripture, which I don't think I'd ever read before, in 2 Corinthians 2, 6-8. And it says, he was punished enough when most of you were united in your judgments against him. Now it's time to forgive him and comfort him. Otherwise, he may become so discouraged that he won't be able to recover. Now show him that you still love him. And I knew that it was written for me. And that's when God really turned my life around and really turned things around for us. And when we really just let go of the past and dropped the rocks and started moving forward and letting God take control of our marriage, it's when God really changed us internally. And we knew that we had to be able to survive, we knew that we both had to completely die and start over, because we were two totally different people than when we got married. Thank God. We were totally different. And God reunited us and put us back together and made us so much stronger and so much better than we would have ever been. Am I thankful that I went through that? Not really, but would I want to go back to what we were? No, never. Because God has made something so broken and so ugly and so dead so alive and so life-giving and so hopeful and so beautiful. And we don't tell this story to magnify the sin, because who wants to talk about their darkest days? Because it's hard, but we want to tell the story to magnify the miracle that God did in us, because he resurrected what was dead. And we know that God can change people. And I know right now, if I can say this real quick, I know that sitting in this room right now, I know that there's all kinds of different feelings right now. There's some of you are thinking, why are they speaking to us? I know that for a fact, because we were actually scheduled to speak at another district ministers retreat, and they had someone new elected in, and it was scheduled a year ago, and we were just called 2 weeks ago. They canceled because basically they didn't really feel like someone who had been through what we had been through should speak into the lives of couples. So I know there's a lot of ministers, and don't be Googling who just got newly elected in. Don't you? I know y'all want to.
She tells way too much information.
This is me. But I know there's a lot of ministers that feel that way. But I also know that there's a lot of ministers here in this room. There's a lot of wives in this room right now that you have nobody else to talk to, and you're hurting. And there's a lot of ministers in this room that are hurting. It could be past mistakes. It could be present. It could be thoughts. But you're hurting, and you really don't know who to go to. Get someone that you can be accountable to. Men and women, do it. There's a lot of hurting, and we are seeing so many of our friends right now. Satan is trying to destroy ministers' marriages like never before. And not only that, but tear families apart. We have so many friends who are in ministry. Their marriage is being attacked. Their grown children who are in ministry are being pulled apart from their family. So Satan is really trying to destroy lives right now. But I just want to thank you for having us and letting us share the story. But get help, and get help for your pastors. Invest in your staff, your pastors on staff. Invest in their marriages, because God can do so much if the marriages in your leadership is strong.
Amen. Amen. Someone said, if you don't stay together through the bad, then you won't be together for the good. We decided to stay together even through the challenge of putting these ugly pieces back together, because we believe that something was better. We don't call what we do perfect marriages against all odds, because there's no perfect marriage, because there's no perfect people. But God takes two imperfect people and he puts them together to make them better than they ever could be on their own. How do you stay together in challenging times? No matter what. You stay together no matter what. It's just as simple as that. We chose to stay together. But there were really 4 reasons why we chose to stay together. Number 1, we chose to stay together for our Lord Jesus Christ, who obviously gave everything for us. We felt like if he would give us another opportunity, we would do our very best to honor him and glorify him with the rest of our days. We chose to stay together for each other because we just believe that we're better together. I'm better with Starla. I don't know that she's better with me, but I'm better with her for sure. And we stay together for our children. I think we got a picture of our 4 kids, the 4 oldest, the 4 kids without their spouses there. And this is at our youngest. And then, do we have all the kids? Do we have the name? That's not all of them, but that's a lot of them. But I show you this because I think about what our family could have looked like had we not chosen to work together to be restored. We wouldn't have had these celebration moments. There's a family that's intact because of it, and we're extremely grateful. 11 years into our restoration, Starla comes to me with this idea. She says, "You've always wanted to write a book, right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't we write our story?" I went, "Oh, no, bad idea. Why would we want to tell everybody about that?" And for 2 years, I drug my feet and we finally wrote the book. We'll have copies with us tomorrow. They're all in the car. We barely got here for tonight. But we'll have that. But there's one last thing I just want to leave with you as we start.
Can I
wrapping
just
this
throw
up.
in, we wrote that story. I know God led us to do it to help other marriages, but it also brought healing and freedom to us. It really did. To tell your story, because people are going to tell your story anyway, right? We knew people were talking about us. We thought, why don't we just go ahead and write it in a book so they can get it straight from us? But it brought us so much freedom. Go ahead.
Yeah. And Starla writes the first 10 chapters from her perspective, and then I write the next 10, then we write the last 5 together. And for pastors, you've got people in your church who are hurting. They need somebody to talk to. It's a great book, especially for the offended spouse, to be able to have somebody that can speak their language and share that emotion and that hurt. From Starla's perspective, it's a great resource. We'd love to make those available to you tomorrow. But in John chapter 20, 19 and 20, I'm going to wrap up with this. In fact, if the worship team would come back up here and just start softly playing. In John 20, 19 and 20, Jesus came and stood among them, and he said, "Peace be with you." And after he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. What was he showing them? He was showing them his scars, right? So in this moment, the disciples' world is completely turned upside down. They've seen Jesus taken down off that cross, placed in a tomb. They're being accused of having stolen the body. They're thinking that their life is going to end the same way Jesus' life just ended. And they're wondering, what's next for us? The rug has literally been pulled out from underneath them. And they're all huddled in a little room, afraid, talking, what are we going to do? When Jesus walks into the room. And remember, Thomas is the one who said, I won't believe he's resurrected unless I see his scars. I'm not going to believe it unless I see the scars. So Jesus walks in the room and shows them his scars. It was the scars that Thomas needed to see in order to believe. Every single one of us have some scars. We've just showed you our ugliest scars. And one thing that we know, and Starla just told the story a moment ago of us getting canceled, we recognize that our scars disqualify us from some people. They do. They still do. 17 years later, it was a slap in the face, a reality check, that our scars disqualify us from some people. But our scars uniquely qualify us for others. And that's... So I could sit around and I could let defeat keep me down or keep us down, or we could just choose to focus on the ones who need us the most, which is kind of the rest of the story. And I only share the rest of this story to show how good God is. It's only because of God. Our family's sitting around in a little small living room in North Dallas. We're having a little prayer meeting together. None of our kids were married at that time. And we're praying and we're just speaking life into our children, and we're asking them, because we were just beginning to start breathing again, starting to possibly dream again. We were asking our kids, what do you think God wants to do with you? What do you think God wants to do in your life? And we're all just dreaming. And our kids said, Mom, Dad, I think it's time to plant another church. And I said, since we're being transparent, I said, hell no. We're not going to do that.
I didn't cuss.
I said, no. I said, the last thing in the world I want to do is put myself out there like that. I said, because I still felt disqualified, even though we were beginning to breathe just a little bit. And our kids said, no, there are people that need us. And so we planted in 2007, we planted Freedom Church. And we thought all we were really going to do And I got to be honest, all I thought we were going to do is we were going to plant a little church over in North Dallas and just kind of stay under the radar and continue to tell our story, because so many times, I can't tell you how many times, we would sit with a couple and they'd ask us to coffee or dinner or lunch, and they'd say, tell us your story, and we would start telling our story. And I'll tell you what I did for years. I'd say, well, we pastored in Houston and had a great church down there, and then the Lord called us to Dallas, and yeah, we planted a church there. I did that a few times, and then we looked at each other and said, we can't do this anymore. We got to show our scars. If somebody asks us our story, we're going to show them our scars. We're going to tell them exactly what happened. And that's what we started doing. And I can't tell you how many times a couple sitting across the table from us, we show our scars and tell our story and tell them why we left Houston, why we're now in Dallas, only for them to start crying and saying, well, that must be why God sent us to you, because we're going through the same thing. Time after time after time. And so I thought we were going to pastor up here and just kind of stay under the radar, and it's just going to be a bunch of broken, messed up people. And I was content with that. The only thing is, God kind of started blessing that work. And I realized there are a whole lot of broken and messed up people in North Dallas. And today, this last weekend, probably 2,700 people with our about 2,000 people in-house and about 700 watching online at Freedom Church. And every Sunday when I walk out there and I look at these people and I think the only explanation for any of this is a really big God, a really good God. The only explanation. Because we lead with this story. My next door neighbor asked me, first time I met him, asked me our story. I thought, oh, not now. I don't want to mess up my next door neighbor. Not on our very first visit, but he asked me my story. So I told him my story. Told him why we left Houston and came to Dallas. And the most unthinkable happened. He looked at me and he said, that's the kind of church I want to go to. Where do you meet? What time do you meet? Paul's been in our church for almost 10 years now. He's probably my third largest giver. And I only say that to say, had I not been willing to tell my story, I would have missed out on the blessing that God was bringing into my life and into our church. He was sending somebody to be a blessing. My transparency and vulnerability and openness was the key. Here just a couple of years ago, a South African businessman came into church, and he was invited by another business. I actually met him at a network meeting outside of church. And he said, I want to come to your church after you heard me speak. He said, I want to come to your church. And I wasn't even preaching. I was just doing a motivational talk at a business network group. So he showed up at church, and afterwards, he was so encouraged. He said, I want to become a member of your church. I pulled out the book. I went and got one off the resource table. I said, Nigel, I said, take this home and read it. And I said, after you read this, if you still want to become a member, I said, come back and talk to me. Well, Nigel's been in our church ever since that day, and has brought many, many other people with him. I'm telling you, if you're willing to show your scars, sometimes that's the very thing people need in order to believe. You should have received a rock sometime tonight. If you have a rock, would you take that rock? If you didn't, Jeremy, would you help me one more time? And did anybody not get a rock? There's a couple people that don't have them. Would you make sure? Thank you. I want you to put a rock just take that rock in your hand. We'll take just a moment here. But here's what I want you to do. In just a moment, we're going to have an opportunity to identify this rock. This rock, it may be a symbol of your anger and your bitterness, your frustration with your situation. It might represent something that is completely unrelated to your marriage. This may not be a failure in marriage. It may not be your shame. It was my shame and it was her anger and unforgiveness. But that may not be your issue right now. Here's what I feel like the Lord really wants us to tap into. The same way I had a moment, I had the season in between my church, our pastorate in Houston, and the church we planted in Dallas. I had that season, that broken season, that painful season, that season of shame, that season that I couldn't quite make sense of. It was the thing that I didn't want to even recognize. I just wanted to hop, skip, and jump right over it. I bet every single one of you have a season like that in your life. You've got a season that you're not so proud of. There's a moment you're not so proud of. I felt something earlier in here. There's either one or some in here, and I know this is so random, but I don't know why it hit me. There's some of you that were sexually molested as a child. You've never told a soul, and you can't make sense of it. It doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying that in order for your scar to make sense, in order for this season to make sense, that you have to come out and tell everybody. I'm not saying that. But for us, we needed to give our story to God and allow Him to redeem it and buy it back from us. Because listen, the scars of Jesus, the scars that He bore when He was raised from the dead, think about it. The resurrection, the power of the resurrection raised Him up from death to life, put breath back in His body, gave Him the ability to walk through the tomb, through the stone, through the wall, into the room where the disciples were. That's a powerful force, but left Him scarred. Why were the scars still there? Because the scars weren't a symbol of His defeat. The scars were a symbol of His victory. You've got some scars. And you've been letting the enemy define it as defeat in your life, as shame in your life, as reproach in your life. I want you to redefine it tonight. And how do you do that? Well, for us, we gave it to God and we allowed Him to do this amazing thing called redeem. Some of you that are a little older, you understand how cool it was to find a Coke bottle that you could redeem at the store, you know? That was really cool. That was free money. When we take our scars and our story and our lives and those moments and those seasons that don't quite make sense, and you give it to God and give Him a chance to redeem it, what happens? He buys it back from you. Well, what does He give you in return for your scar? What does He give you in return for the season, for the event, for the moment that doesn't quite make sense? He gives you purpose. He gave us a purpose. Now we give purpose to our story and we use it to help others. He's going to allow you to be able to help others. There's nothing more powerful than a personal story. There's nothing more powerful than your personal testimony. People can argue theology all day long, and we can go around circles with other denominations on theology, but come on, nobody can take away what happened to you personally. I know this happened to me. I know this is my experience. And God wants to redeem your story and give it some purpose. There's some of you, you've been so hurt, you're still carrying baggage from something that a board member said to you. Somebody said some evil things while you were leaving that church. Some of you said some things and you're still there. You're trying to make sense out of it. Is it worth the fight? Is it worth going on? Should I pack up and move someplace else? would you take that thing that doesn't quite make sense, that you can't seem to figure out why it happened, how God allowed it to happen, or where you place it in the story of your life, would you just identify that stone in the same way Jesus said to those Pharisees, and he said to Starla, look, you got to drop that rock. You got to quit throwing those stones. I'm going to ask you to drop that rock up here at this altar. If you can't get them all right here on the stage, you can line up to the left and the right, but I'm going to have you bring it forward and drop it. What are you going to do? You're going to allow God to redeem it. He's going to give you purpose. He's going to give you strength. He's going to give you a reason to be able to use that story to help somebody else. He's going to allow you to frame that thing in a way that's going to give you a way to use it to shut the voice of the enemy, to shut the shame down, to shut the doubts down, to shut all the questions down, and to be able to use it for his good. Starla had to drop these while we were in Israel. Tell them about that.
Yeah, several years into our restoration, we were in Israel and we were by the Sea of Galilee, and there was a teaching. You know how you go and you sit in little groups and you have different ministers who teach. And I had checked out. You know, I was just looking at the water, and I saw all the rocks along the banks of the water, and the water was just like glass. It was beautiful. And I just walked over to the side and sat on one of the big rocks, and I just really felt like the Lord was telling me, even though you've come through restoration, even though you're doing good, you guys have a good, solid marriage, there's still things that you're not letting go of. And it was just some of those trigger things that the enemy would use so many times with me, just to give me doubt, just put the word in my head or put the thought in my head, and I would have doubt, or I'd question, or I would remember, and it hurt. And Satan knew exactly what he was doing. And I was exhausted, Brother Terry, exhausted. Even though I was pursuing, doing the right things, it was just a continual fight, and I was tired of the battle in the mind. And I just picked up several rocks, and I named each and every one of them. And I just threw them one by one. And I would watch it hit the water and watch the ripple effect and watch it spread out, and then it just vanished. And I kept doing it, and I kept doing it until I felt the release that I was done. And I told the enemy that day, I said, never again will you attack me with those words, those thoughts, those triggers. I threw them. They're gone. I can't find them. They're gone. There's no way I can go back and every time you try, I'm going to say, I threw it into the Sea of Galilee. It's gone. It's been paid for. I'm free.
So in just a moment, we're all going to stand as you begin to lead us back into a chorus. You may want to do this as a couple. You may not. You may want to do it as an individual. Once you identified that moment, that season, that event, that pain, then we're going to come to this altar somewhere in this front, and I want you to kneel down. And as you lay that rock down, I want you to verbally say to God, because you're making a contractual exchange with him tonight. You're saying, I'm going to give you the doubts, the questions, the fears, the pain, the shame. God, I'm giving you the anger that I feel towards those that have offended me, that have doubted me, that have made life miserable for me. I want you to verbally, I want you to put it on this altar. And then when you lay that down, I want you to ask him to redeem it. Say, God, I want you to buy this back. You're giving him your pain and your shame. He's going to redeem it. He's going to give you a purpose. He's going to give you a strength. He's going to give you the ability to be able to use it for God's glory, to shut the lies of the enemy and the doubts that have been invading your mind. And I don't know exactly how God does that. Doesn't mean you're going to write a book about it. You may never tell another soul about it from this moment right here. Or you might turn around and say, you know what? I'm going to tell my story so I can help somebody else. I don't know how God chooses to redeem it. That's up to him and that's up to you. But you got to give it to him. You've got to give it to him. Stand to your feet, will you? Fears, doubts, hurts, pain, exhaustion, shame. What's the thing that you don't want to talk about? What's the moment that you want to just skip right over? What's the season that you would rather forget, that you want nobody else to know? That very thing is the very thing that holds you back, that hinders you. It's the weakest link in the story of your life. But not after tonight, not after God redeems it. Would you let him purchase your pain and give you the strength, give you the power to overcome that thing? Father, I pray right now in the name of Jesus, every father wound, every feeling of abandonment, every moment when we've questioned our calling and questioned our skills and talents and ability, and even questioned your anointing upon our life. When we've preached and given that altar call and not a single hand was raised, we felt so defeated. We've wondered, what in the world are we doing? Are we wasting our time, our people's time, God's time? Am I even doing what I'm called to do? God, we give all of those moments and all of those doubts and all those questions, all of the hurt and all the pain, the moments where we failed and we've made miserable mistakes. We've missed the mark of what you've really wanted us to be and who you've called us to be. God, we give that to you tonight. We lay it down at this altar tonight. We say, no more will I be defined by shame and by failure. My scars are not a symbol of my defeat. My scars after tonight will be a symbol of victory because I'm giving it to you tonight, Lord. I give it all to you in Jesus' name. While we're worshiping, at the time that you're ready, come and bring it to this altar. You can kneel and stay there as long as you need or as short as you need. Come on.